Improving the transition from high school to post-secondary through programs such as dual enrollment is a challenge that all states are tackling. Our panel discussion this afternoon is designed to share some stories and successes from the field. Our panelists this afternoon include Candice McQueen, the Commissioner for the Tennessee Department of Education; Gavin Payne, the Director for United States Policy and Advocacy and Communications for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation; Jean Sharratt, Executive Director of the Washington Student Achievement Council; and Nancy Zimpher, Chancellor for the State University of New York. Please join me in welcoming this esteemed panel to the stage. Thank you.
So good afternoon. It's a thrill to be here. I saw a podium. I thought maybe we should step up and start talking, but no, that's okay. As the governor so ably introduced us, I'm Gavin Payne with the Gates Foundation. It's a thrill to be here. It's wonderful to moderate this first plenary conversation of the conference. Before I get into some prepared remarks, I really have to do a shout out to the Education Foundation of the States, the Education Commission of the States, ECS, for 50 years of amazing work on behalf of students and young people throughout the country. And absolutely. And I also think that just judging from this room, judging from the conversations we have, judging from the topics that we have in the next couple of days, I, for one, and on behalf of the Gates Foundation, am looking forward to 50 more years, and it'll be a great time. I want to also recognize the governor, an amazing achievement over the last several years. The graduation rate in Nevada is moving ever steadily higher. It is amazing work, and I know obviously for all of us in states, the work is still ongoing, but it's quite a testimony to your dedication to higher standards and effects for people throughout your state. So congratulations on that. You know, Jeremy outlined in his remarks the notion of why are we here, the notion of how do we prepare young people? How do we sort of get them to the place where they can apply successfully? How do we get them to a place where they can afford to college and pay for college? And more importantly, and most importantly, for a lot of the people that we work for and work on behalf of, the people that we saw today, how do we get them to stay and complete and be successful both in their college careers and in their lives afterwards? We basically are here because we want young people to be ready for college. We want a kid finishing the 12th grade of English to go right into English 101 in college and to be able to survive and thrive. And the reason is you know the numbers, right? So no matter where you go, whether somewhere between 28 and 40% of students have to, when going into a 4-year or 2-year institution, they are faced with having to take remedial courses. In some community college settings, that number is as high as 50%. The Foundation's work is dedicated to those goals. We live by a very sort of simple maximum that every person deserves the chance to live a healthy and productive life. And in the United States, that means education. Our big bet in the United States is about education being the ticket to a better life for every person in the country. So that means in K-12, we invest very deeply, very heavily in teachers. We invest in students. We invest in systems to improve the system. In higher ed, we've been investing in students as well, in affordability, in cost, in technology that makes the experience of college much more fulfilling and profitable, personally profitable. So today, though, we're talking about the preparing piece. We have some videos that we'll show you, and we'll have those as discussions. And just as Jeremy sort of indicated, the key is going to be the connection between the students that we serve and the work that's going on. And so we'll see some videos of young people talking about their experience being prepared, and then the solutions that my fellow panel members have come up with to deal with just those exact problems. At the foundation, we're developing partnerships to speak to K-12 and higher ed leaders getting together more closely, breaking down the silos between. Even in our own organization, we're breaking down those silos and doing a lot of work very consciously, very purposefully to make that transition one that's very, very seamless. I was talking to a colleague recently who was in a state who had just convened the academic chairs of his higher ed and his K-12 systems. And one of them came up to him afterwards and said, you know, that's the first time I spent more than 30 minutes with my counterpart in the last 10 years. And that just really can't continue to happen. And I think with the people that you're going to hear from today, with the work that's going on in lots of places, those silos are breaking down on a daily basis, and it's wonderful. So we'll do a little bit of, I'm going to introduce each of the panelists. They're going to take a few minutes and explain the work that they've done, the work that they're engaged in. Then we'll come back and we'll start sort of running through those videos of students and their experiences and sort of have a couple of questions and answers and commentary on that. And then and I'll make sure that we leave ample time at the end for questions and answers from you participants in this activity. And so there are mic runners and we'll work all that through. But I want to start off with Dr. Nancy Zimpher, who's the Chancellor of the State University of New York. In addition to being that chancellor, she heads the coalition in New York of higher education leaders called Higher Ed for Higher Standards. It's actually a nationwide coalition. It's basically a coalition that was formed with the principle that every state should insist on K-12 academic standards that adequately prepare students for college and careers. Nancy.
Thank you, Gavin. Hi, everybody. So I'm the chancellor of the State University of New York, and in contrast to representatives of two states, I really only represent my own little silo, but I'm going to tell you how we're trying to get out of that silo. I consider being the chancellor of SUNY a corollary to what does the dog do when it catches the car? If you think about that image, we run and run and run, and finally one becomes the leader of a system as complex and as diverse as the State University of New York, with community colleges and technical schools, baccalaureate and doctoral institutions, and medical schools, and about 465,000 students. So what we did about 6 years ago is begin to frame our presence in the state of New York, and I'm proud to be a delegate here at ECS to think about what a state can do collectively. That was a tough time for New York and other states, and so of course, after lots of deliberation, we decided that the power of SUNY was really embedded in being a big part of the economic recovery of our state and enhancing the quality of life of New Yorkers. And it's an important story because we knew we could be helpful in energy and sustainability, and we had these medical schools, and we could certainly be helpful in healthcare. But what has turned out to be the riveting focus of the State University of New York is this thing we say this way: sealing the leaks in the education pipeline. So my very first appointment was Johanna Duncan-Portier, who is in the House today as the Senior Vice Chancellor for the Education Pipeline. Nobody was using that terminology. Cradle to career was some kind of Kids Are Us endeavor, and we actually began to frame our entire work around sealing these leaks. And I do think for those system heads and university presidents in the House, and I hope there are many of you, if you are here, you can see this changing wind. I think we sort of used to say if you would send us better students, we would do a better job, K-12. And I think what we've come to understand, especially at SUNY and elsewhere across the country, no, on the contrary, we prepare the teachers who teach the students who come to college. Ready or not, we own this challenge. So in trying to articulate how we could seal the leaks in the education pipeline, we drew a pipeline, sometimes called a roadmap, from cradle to career or careers. Let's not fuss about that. We may have many, but the notion that we, as a system of public higher education would be invested in early childhood, in getting kids on grade level in the 3rd and 8th grade, getting kids graduated from college, not just with a diploma, but college ready, and getting kids to matriculate in college and get that degree. So what we've been trying to do is to paste onto this pipeline the number of strategies that we are using, tools in our toolbox with evidence base to make sure that we can drive change. I come, as Gavin knows, from Cincinnati. That was the birth of this notion of cradle to career, using a community-based, evidence-driven consortium of the committed to actually build a whole community of people who would help seal the leaks in the education pipeline. So I hope today to have an opportunity to tell you how we're working this ambitious goal of sealing the leaks in the education pipeline. We've always been interested in access, but I think what we've learned is throwing the doors wide open and making sure everybody can come is only step one to completion, and how we get more of our students graduated and on time, debt-free, and more importantly, how we get them into a job or graduate school so that they can be self-sustaining, successful citizens themselves. So I look forward, Gavin, to commentary on the videos where we can talk about the particular strategies that we are employing, but I'll end here. Recently, publicly, the State University of New York pledged to Governor Cuomo and to our legislature that over the next 5 years, instead of an annual yield of 93,000 degree completers at the State University of New York, we would move, using what works at scale, to graduate 150,000 degree recipients by 2020. We're out there, we're public, we gotta do it. Thank you.
That's amazing. Yeah. That's amazing news. Thank you very much. And I think one of our sort of core tenets in the post-secondary work that we do at the foundation is that the economy is going to demand 11 million more credentials with value in the marketplace per year. After that, you're certainly doing your part. Thank you for that piece of information. Dr. Jean Sharratt is the executive director of the Washington Student Achievement Council, cabinet-level council charged with early learning throughout the education spectrum of the institutions, plus institutions outside of government in Washington State. He's going to talk a little bit about his work as well.
Very good. Thank you, Gavin, very much. I think I would describe our work as really cross-sector collaboration. That's at the heart of all we do, and the Student Achievement Council was formed several years ago to do just that, to bring the families together from early learning, K-12, and higher education. In the room today, we have our Superintendent of Public Instruction, Randy Dorn, here, 2 members from the State Board of Education, as well as a member from my council, too, just to talk about that collaboration. We have 5 citizen members on the council and 4 sector members. So in all of our meetings, the sectors are represented, the public baccalaureates, the independent colleges of Washington, and our 34 community and technical college, as well as our K-12 system. So in all of our meetings, there's discussion about how we can collaborate and do our work together. In Washington, our theme is this: a continuum of excellence in education, from early learning through lifelong learning. So we do not really have sector warfare between early learning, K-12, and higher education. We really have a collaborative environment, because it does us no good not to have a great early learning program where students have no place to go in the K-12 system, and it does us no good to have a great K-12 system if they have no place to go in post-secondary. So we've had really strong collaboration over the last several years. A couple of things we'll talk about more detail later, but I'll just mention here real quickly for you. Our dual credit and concurrent enrollment is very large in Washington. We currently have 186,000 students participating in that. The governor this evening will sign legislation that expands that down to the 10th grade. So we now have sophomores, juniors, and seniors in high school who are taking college in the high school coursework. That is also personified by the fact that all low-income students' credit will be paid for, as well as rural students. So low-income students before, who were taking college and high school courses, had to pay for college credit. That was not possible And so we've expanded that so that low-income students now have up to 10 credits paid by the legislature, and they can continue to pay additional credits beyond that if they would like. Also, we have a rural component, so those students who live a distance from a public baccalaureate or community college or ICW also have their credits paid for too. So we're expanding great access for sophomores, juniors, and seniors in our dual credit program in Washington. That's working very well. In Washington, of course, we give credit for AP, IB in Cambridge, also Tech Prep, and we also have a traditional Running Start program. And we have currently 20,000 students who are in Running Start. Those are students who are in high school and a community or public baccalaureate at the same time. They get dual credit for that. And about 10% of that 20,000 graduate from high school with both an AA degree and a college diploma. We're trying to reduce debt, increase access, and increase attainment, and the dual credit, dual enrollment helps us with that. College-bound scholarship, we're one of 3 states, Indiana, Oklahoma, the other 2, that have an early commitment to going on. You're eligible if you're free and reduced lunch in Washington, which is roughly 43 to 45% of our K-12 population. You sign up as a 7th or 8th grader. You maintain at least a 2.0 throughout your system, get in no trouble, and you have 4 years of college tuition ready for you at the highest paid public baccalaureate in the state, which is currently the University of Washington. We combine that funding with a program called the State Need Grant. Washington is the most generous of the 50 states for financial aid for low-income students. The college-bound State Need Grant do that. It's a game changer. Our students are graduating an average of 15 percentage points higher from high school, those who have signed up for the program versus those who have not signed up. It's increasing graduation. Give the students the dream, give them the support. Started in 2007, we have a junior, a sophomore, and a freshman class in our 2-year and public baccalaureates right now. Their GPAs, their persistence, and their coursework is as high, if not higher, than the general population. Give the students the dream, give them the support, and they will perform. College Bound for us is a game changer in Washington. Common Core, we're one of 4 or 5 states. They're also represented in this room that have signed an agreement with every public baccalaureate. We have 6, all 34 of our community technical colleges, and 9 of our 10 ICWs, Independent Schools of Washington, to use a Smarter Balanced Assessment score of a 3 or a 4 that would allow those students to move directly into college course-bearing work at the baccalaureate or 2-year level without having to take placement exam. And the universities and the other institutions have agreed that they would use a 3 or 4 for admissions practice as well. So we're very pleased about that. That's providing a great incentive for the students to do well on the test, and that's working quite well for us in Washington. 12th year campaign, very quickly, and I'll scoot along here, is a campaign where we have a strong relationship with the K-12 system, where we go out to schools, have parent meetings, students meetings, counselors meetings, where we work with students to fill out the federal application for financial aid, work with them on state applications, explain to parents what financial aid is about. We are not different than anybody else in the room in that we have a changing demographic of our high school population. Most are first generation. That is also the workforce of the future, and we clearly recognize that, and they don't have college-going conversation at home. We need to help that and support that, so we go into the communities with our work where the students are at and have a lot of parent meetings to help out in that regard. We've currently done over 100 school districts this year on helping them fill out the federal application. We also have undocumented support for our students, and we call that the DREAM Act in Washington. Last year we had over 2,000 students sign up for financial aid through our state deed grant. They are enrolled in both 2- and 4-year institutions this year. So we're very happy about the undocumented part with our students. Career Guidance Washington is a partnership with Randy's shop and the State Board of Education and others to work with counselors in that regard. And finally, our Cradle Through College Coalition is a statewide effort where it's from birth all the way through lifelong learning, where we're partnering with organizations to lift everyone up.
Marvelous. Marvelous. Thank you. Thank you very much. We'll touch on the first generation learners piece, I'm sure, in the question period. Last but not least, Dr. Candice McQueen is the Commissioner of the Tennessee Department of Education. She has been since January. Prior to that, however, so she has it all. Prior to that, however, she was the Dean of Education at Lipscomb University in Tennessee, and as we all know, sort of Tennessee has been a leader in the school improvement movement for some period of time and has a lot of experience and a lot of sort of work ahead of her and behind her down the road to continue the amazing work that's been happening in Tennessee.
Great. Thank you. I appreciate being here. So I am 6 months in on this position, and I can say, like the governor said in his state address when he was being named governor for his second term, he said, I inherited this baton in this relay race that's a real long-term view and a long-term vision for Tennessee, and I certainly feel that way. Back in 2007, Tennessee was given an F in false advertising around the proficiency level that we were saying our kids were achieving in Tennessee and the reality of where they needed to be nationally. All of our kids were proficient when in reality, very few of them were proficient. Between 20 and 30% of them were proficient based on where we sat in the nation's report card. That was a wake-up call for Tennessee. I remember it well. I remember us moving to the Tennessee Diploma Project standards and making a very, very specific effort to align our work to higher standards and to say we're not only going to do it at K-12, we're going to think about higher ed in this picture. In that whole time frame, we've improved. In fact, you can look at 4 very specific metrics. One, we are the fastest improving state in the nation on the last administration of NAEP. We don't know the results as of this year yet, but fastest improving in 4th and 8th grade math and reading. We're very proud of that because that is a testament to the work that has been done in the state. Secondly, we've improved in our ACT average as a state, and we're one of a few states that do require every student in Tennessee to take the ACT as an 11th grader, and we have continued to improve our ACT average. Right now, with every student taking it, we're at a 19.3, and we're setting our sights on the average of a 21 here in a few years. We also, as a state, have moved in our graduation rate. We well surpassed the national average. And quite frankly, last year I heard this. I didn't know this when I actually took this position, but we were having all kinds of conversations about graduation rates, and we are the fastest improving state in the nation in graduation rate as well. We've also made incremental improvements every single year on our assessments that we give to all students. So great story. But what I will tell you is the governor said we can't end there. He said, what we need to do is make sure that we can actually tell a story about every student having the opportunity to get post-secondary education. And this is really the story of Tennessee. We still have 58% of our students who are still enrolled after the first year of their post-secondary experience, which means 42% of them are not enrolled. So we do have more students going to post-secondary, but we don't have them necessarily completing. We also still have too few making the decision to go on. So the governor set forth a vision to reach our Drive to 55 goal, which is that 55% of all new jobs in Tennessee by 2025 will require some type of post-secondary credential, post-secondary degree. To meet that goal, we said we've got to have more of our kids with that credential. And so we now have free grades 13 and 14 to every student in the state of Tennessee. 1 million kids in public education can go on and get, starting this year with this class, can get community college education, 2 years completely free, or they can make a decision to go to one of our technical colleges. We have 13 community colleges in the state and around 27 technical colleges in the state. And the state will be providing through last dollar scholarships, what Pell does not cover, or our Tennessee Hope scholarship through lottery monies. What that does not cover, the state is covering, and that was passed in the General Assembly, and it has been a motivating vision for the state. As someone who is a Commissioner of Education for K-12, I also sit on our higher ed boards, and the conversation we're having right now is the amazing opportunity to align our work and to ensure that we have students taking rigorous coursework in high school so they can be successful with the Tennessee Promise. And what's encouraging is that we had 58,000 students apply for the Tennessee Promise out of 74,000 Tennessee graduates from high school last year. 58,000 applied. We were #1 in FAFSA completion rate. Imagine that.
I love it.
We have 31,000, though, that are eligible and taking advantage of it because we did build in 3 components. 1 is financial aid, but 2 is mentoring. All students had to actually attend with their mentor 2 mandatory meetings, And we did fall with some of our numbers because we had students that did not attend one of the mandatory meetings. We're also requiring community service. So they will be expected to have a certain number of community service hours completed before they begin every single one of the semesters in which they are receiving Tennessee Promise funding. And so based on those requirements and the mentors, 9,000 mentors in Tennessee signed up to actually mentor at least 5 of these students going into our programs. Those mentors are a very, very important part of our story. And so this will be the marker of the first class of our Tennessee Promise entering freshmen in our community colleges across the state. And I hope in a couple years I'll be able to come back and share with you that they all graduated and they all have a credential and they're all in a job in our state or are certainly around our state.
Perfect, it's a date. I want to turn on now to the video portion of our show. We've compiled the, UCS has done a marvelous job in the last couple of years of really sort of, with a couple of our other partners with the foundation, sort of taking it to the students and checking in with them about what sort of their experiences have been. And I want to sort of then weave those into the conversations that we'll have up here. You've seen 3 very different ways of sort of approaching the problem and the issue. And I want to sort of key in on the students first and then take the conversation where it leads us. And I'd like for folks to key up the first video, please. It's number 5, I think it's Being Ready is Being in Control. They're very brief, and then we'll just sort of riff off of them.
As I got into college, I've gotten to learn a lot more about myself. I don't really focus too much on the grade. I focus on like my work and what I think on certain things, and not trying to focus only on what the teacher wants for me, but what I want from like the class.
I think the biggest shifts for me personally, and I would think other people as well, is just discipline.
So let's talk about that a little bit too. What this video speaks to me is the notion that not quite sure what is expected of me or what I can expect when I go. I'd love to sort of hear each of you talk a little bit about ways that you're helping young people sort of really have a good grounding in what the kind of discipline that is required when they achieve their goal of getting to an institution of higher education, and sort of how that takes them. What sorts of ways can we are we demystifying the process? And I'll open it up to the floor.
Well,
Nancy?
I think one thing I would like to accomplish in this hour is the degree of engagement across the sectors within our states. And in some respects, maybe as a leader in post-secondary education, I might feel I have the greatest challenge here because it's still easy to come to the table. You know this in your Washington experience and in Tennessee. You can get people to come to meetings, but can you really get people to change practice? And that happens on the ground, one community at a time. So the big opportunity of having 64 campuses, literally 30 miles from every New Yorker, is that it's pretty obvious whether you're engaged or not in solving the problem. And even though we brag about 75% graduation rates, that's 25% who are not there. And half of them are not even going to go on to college in September. So I guess the example I'd like to pull up for the young people talking is the notion of the early college high school. I think states are one by one finding ways to support this concept. I think New York is second only to Texas in the number of early college high schools that we support. But even there, it's supposed to be a partnership between the high school, the local college, 2-year or 4-year, and local businesses. And one of our challenges is to really make that a reality. So I think what an early college high school does for the kids who tell us about their experience is that it gets you thinking of yourself as a college student. And mindset is probably one of the biggest areas of research that we are enjoying right now. So it gets the campus engaged. of course it engages the high school. But in the P-TECH model, which is coming to a state near you very soon, Pathways to Technology, Early College High Schools, it gets the employers engaged for that student who's finally getting focused at an early age on college being possible.
Perfect. Are you finding the same in each of your places? Is it a combination of that? Is it dual enrollment serves the purpose, or how does it work?
Absolutely. We know as a state from our own data that students who are taking more rigorous coursework, one, tend to go on to college, and two, they end up completing and actually getting the credential that they started. And so the early coursework is critical. So encouraging students not only to take more AP courses, but in our rural areas, making sure they are available to our students, as well as dual credit, dual enrollment. We've also just started something called work-based learning, which is getting more of our students in internships, externships, apprenticeships in grades 11th and 12th, so they can actually get experiences in the field, again, with mentors. We have some interesting data that also points to, as a state, we have fewer and fewer students that actually have some kind of summer or after-school work experience before they go on into a post-secondary program. So they don't even have the models of being out in the field, doing the work, learning the grit and the determination, and you have to be on time, right? And you have to follow through. They've not had an experience like that as much as they would have 10 or even 5 years ago. So it's declining. And so as we have tried to determine what can improve that, it's absolutely rigorous coursework paired with other kinds of opportunities, externships, internships, work-based learning actually in the field.
Good. Being in control, being ready.
A couple of quick thoughts. Planning, preparation, and alignment are really things we're focused on quite a lot there, helping students plan early, helping them prepare early, and helping align coursework going forward with a career cluster. I'll start really quickly with a fifth grade program. I know it's not post-secondary, but one of our campuses, Western Washington University, has a Compass to Campus program where every fifth grader in the geographical area comes to campus, has a mentor, has a support person. They're there the whole day. Those students have a chance as a fifth grader to see what a university looks like and begin that college-going culture. We then go into the middle school where we have lots of counseling support there and career planning going on there, not the least of which is the College-Bound Scholarship, 7th and 8th graders. That works really good. We have a website called Ready, Set, Grad, and on that particular website you can hit 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, whatever your grade level is. It'll open up, it'll talk about how to get ready, how to get set, how to graduate, financial aid, financial assistance, those things. So it's very popular. We get a lot of hits from parents, counselors, and students on that. We have our Career Guidance Washington, where students are developing a high school and beyond plan with specific lesson plans through 6 through 12 on that particular area. Our Gear Up is very popular statewide. It's very popular nationally. AVID's a popular program nationally too,
yes.
So we like those as well. And finally, our 12th year campaign works really well too with counselors.
Marvelous. So I want to riff on that a little bit and cue up the next video too. And we'll continue the conversation. The next video is titled "We Don't Know What We Don't Know," and it's sort of on a theme. It's a little bit sort of hit home with me. 9 months ago, I dropped off my eldest daughter Zoe at school in college and had some time once she came home from summer last week to say, now what is it that I forgot to tell you? What is it that I should have prepared you for? And it was, I think this video is very telling, and we'll sort of riff on the topic then. Can we have video number 2, We Don't Know What We Don't Know?
Even though I went to a high school that I think really prepared me for college, college is such a new world from the last 15 years of school you have before.
It's not like high school that your teachers often tell you and remind you, hey, this is due on this date. You have to remind yourself every time.
I think high school and middle school, like all your school, it's kind of like a comfort because you don't really like leave your home. It's the same thing every day. Once you go to college, it's different. You never know what could happen. You know, kind of like jumping off a cliff and not knowing if you're gonna land right or just end up kind of like splattered.
That's my favorite tagline of the whole set of videos, splatter. We've talked a little bit about the sort of the programs that we've in each of the states and each of our institutions have done to make it easier, make it better, make it more seamless to get to the higher education and to finish especially. I'd love to, I want to riff on what more could we be doing and talk about that a little bit. Just get your thoughts about what's sort of left undone in the space that we can work on in that transition space. And let's start with you, Candice.
I think in this area, when we analyze what we still need to do, we are certainly improving academically, and we're improving the rigor of coursework. We're putting in requirements that are graduation requirements that better align with exactly what post-secondary requires on entry into post-secondary. But we still have room to go there. I don't think we're fully aligned yet. We have worked on our definition of college and career readiness. We're aligning our new test, which is called TN Ready, which will be a college success test. It will tell you more explicitly the readiness for college, and we'll be using something similar like the Smarter Balance in Park States will be using to ensure that this score shows that the student doesn't need remedial education. They're ready for entry into post-secondary. But the areas that we can still work on are ensuring that what we are requiring in our high schools actually match what a freshman in a community college, a TCAT, those are our technical colleges in Tennessee, or a four-year college would require. As someone who spent 13 years in higher education, I know we still have a disconnect there. When I'm working with college freshmen on writing, and I know that their writing stinks, something happened well before they got to college that was not being, they weren't being prepared. They weren't in a feedback loop. They weren't required to have certain expectations. And so we have room to go there. I think we can all say we've made improvements and we're proud of the growth that we've made. I'm still concerned that we have a gap in that area.
A couple quick things. Financial aid, I think, is a big thing for our students in terms of them knowing about the financial aid situation, particularly with parents, first generation. Again, they're also unaware of the financial aid available to them across the country. That's big for us. We do a lot of bridge programs where our college-bound students are in support groups at 9, 10, 11, and 12 in their high schools. They work with the university or the community college to build a bridge that summer so they're not just dropped off on campus. They come to a summer institute ahead of time, and then they also have support groups through that issue as well. So access, retention, and attainment requires support, a big piece for us.
Yep, thank you. Nancy, going forward? I mean, there's a lot on the plate of what's left undone, a couple of...
Well, one of the concerns I have is that whenever we introduce the concept of 1,000 points of light, we can now declare victory. We have thousands of points of light. And we have 21 tools that we are trying to garner at SUNY, 4 or 5 of them into the high school to dual credit and to get our students engaged in a thing called DegreeWorks right away so they know which courses they are taking, get our students, our high school students, in applied learning opportunities, creating a MOOC so that they can look at what college feels like from a different point of view. I'm happy about that, but I'd rather take a comment from we don't know what we don't know. I really think that we should be talking about continuous improvement, getting better. Some say becoming the best at getting better. If I had to take you somewhere, I'd take you to Menominee Falls School District in Milwaukee to look at how teachers and students and the custodial staff and the parents are using data to determine readiness. So I'm a little worried that we are proliferating its across the states and within the state and within SUNY, or within all of our organizations to solve the problem, but we still haven't conceded that the unit record might be important, that an individual student profile is the only way we're going to understand whether every student is ready. And so I'd like to see state policy drift in the direction of all of us, without the finger pointing, getting better at getting better. And the only way we're going to be able to do that is to take deep dives into individual student dashboards, into learning how to read the data. And quite frankly, I would say we should keep our eye on what's happening in healthcare. Yeah. Shifting from how many visitors did you have in your office to how healthy they are is the same equation we have to use in determining the readiness for college. And so I'm really just saying, I think we can throw a lot at this, and we have a tendency to throw more, because that's what we do. We create new ideas and new programs without the data across time to know that that particular intervention is the one we should keep doing, and the 10 that aren't evidence-based are the ones we need to, oh my gosh, quit doing.
Yeah, so I think those are absolutely marvelous points. I had the heads up at the side that we have to finish out our video portion. We'll go to question and answers, but I want to put a pin in that for all of us to think about as well. We do tend to be sort of program-oriented, 1,000 points of light. We've got something to solve this, to solve this, to solve this. I do think that there's some systems work that we have to do collectively, and collectively is the major word there. There is some thematic work that we need to do in terms of universal expectation of college going and college rates. And I think there is a lot of work for the institutions that are represented here to be doing just exactly along the lines that you're talking about, and that is being really honest with ourselves about what data shows that what's working and not, and continuing and growing the things that are and not those that are not. And a surfeit of stories does not make data and evidence, and that's a lot of work that I think we have to do. We have mic runners in the room that are ready to go to jump at your table. If anybody has a question, you just need to raise your hand really, really high so that they can see you, and we can go from there. And we can do, I think, about 10 minutes of that work, and then we'll go on. There's one right up here. Right up in front, then we've got one in the back if you want to do a tag team of the mics. Middle on that side, and then we've got one up front here.
Don? Yes. So they're just following what was just said. I totally agree that there are all these points of light, but I think that the fundamental problem we're facing is that we're still in the 20th century and our kids are in the 21st. And no matter what we do in terms of trying to support them to go through a system that is 100 years old, we're not going to get anywhere. The reason that we have a problem engaging kids is because they're not engaged from the kindergarten on. They are never in charge of their own learning. We don't track their learning individually, as you were saying. We don't support them where they are, when they need to be supported. And with technology, we are not in a position to do that. So I would like the rest of the panel to address that challenge, because it's meaningless to continue to add program after program to find ways of helping them pay for college when they're not with us. They're someplace else.
I think it's a very good question. I'm hoping everybody heard the question. One sort of comment from our standpoint, the sort of the consumer nature of students is quite sophisticated at even the 6th grade level, and kids are really, if enfranchised, can really take a lot of ownership of their own education. But I'd love to have the panel talk about that if they have specific examples of ownership or achieving ownership by the students, taking control. If not, go on.
No, so from the perspective of K-12, I would actually add in higher ed. I think both have room for improvement there. So if you've been in a higher ed classroom and it looks exactly like what it would have looked like 50 years ago, then that's also a sign that we have a continuum problem, not just K-12. Sometimes we blame on why isn't K-12 changed. So all of that has to be guided by what does the workplace actually need, right? What do we need to be able to do? What do we need to be able to think like? What kind of skills, what kind of knowledge base do we need when we're actually out in the field? That's why our next stage of work will be around the word alignment. That alignment is critical. I have gone out with our Commissioner of Economic Development a variety of times, our Commissioner of Labor, and we go around talking about the issues of alignment. There are things that we are requiring in K-12 or quite frankly in post-secondary that don't align to the reality of what we need in our region, or they don't align with the reality of what a manager or a leader or some of these others that you want to actually create new jobs for the future need, because we are stuck in a system that has not progressed. It hasn't thought about personalization of learning, which you're referencing, technology in new ways. How do we actually get students more into the field earlier and earlier, not just, we've talked about internships in college. We need to be doing that in high school. By the way, we need to be doing that in middle school. Right. So earlier opportunities out in the field. So our work is around alignment. That's why I say we have a long way to go just in aligning all of the things, as said earlier, the 1,000 points of light that we've done, which are all very progressive and they're working. But for the next stage, to take us to the next level, all of this has to be aligned more specifically, and we will only get there through more personalization. So internally, we're creating a personalized learning strand that's around college and career readiness using technology, and some actual apps that we're going to be designing for students to help them see what's available to them, and then the pathway that they need to take to get there, and the type of work experiences and outside of school experiences as well as inside of school experiences they need to get there. So that's burgeoning work within the department now.
Could we do 30 seconds?
I think it's good.
Real
Please
quick.
do, 30 seconds, absolutely.
Thank you. A couple of things. We run focus groups across the state with students, parents, and families about engaging their learning, helping in that regard, and with counselor groups, that seems to be working well. We have a lot of cross-agency work with the Department of Health, Department of Early Learning, Department of Social and Health Services, where we combine data to inform impact, so I really appreciated your point on that, and that's important. If we didn't have those collaborations, I think we would not be as successful in the state. We have a lot of competency-based learning going on at the high school and post-secondary that's working well for us, and I mentioned flexibility with college and a high school program.
Perfect.
I just only want to...
That was a good 30 seconds, by the way.
Yeah, I just very quickly want to comment on this notion that, I'm looking at the heroes of this organization. John Goodlad had the idea that simultaneous renewal might be the fix. And what's interesting to me about early college high schools is that the curriculum is project-based. It personalizes learning. It's usually supported by a digital base. It's very attuned to workforce demands. It teaches students to work in teams, to be creative. I think it goes where students live. The bigger challenge is, does it go where faculty live? Does it go where teachers live? And the notion of simultaneous renewal is that if you're going to say this is really a good thing for an early college high school to do, it might be a good thing for the Department of XYZ at your local university to do. Until we fuse the kind of funding that will drive that kind of simultaneous renewal, we will still be in parallel play. And I want you to appreciate that coming from higher education, that's a really hard thing to say. I could be voted off the island, but we are pretty far apart. And as state policymakers, this notion of hybrid or fused funding is one way to drive new conceptions of teaching and learning that will occur in colleges and in schools.
Blended teaching and learning, blended and personalized learning and teaching for everyone in this segment. That's true.
And I want to add one more thing, and it's around this idea of teacher externships. And we could call that faculty externships for higher ed. We're looking at that model in some incentives and some grants for some of our areas in the state that actually need teachers in the classrooms to understand what the workplace skill set need is, and for them to go out and serve in an externship and then come back and bring that to the students. And so that's another model that we believe is very valuable in making sure the faculty connect to what the reality is of the need.
Good, thank you. We have time for one more question. I'm going to go back there to the second person who raised his hand, and then we'll do a quick response and go from there. Thank you.
Thank you. Is this working?
Yes.
I'm Senator Howard Stevenson from Utah. The new Forgotten Half report shows that students, people who have some college, are no better off than people who have no college. That's the recent data. And following on to the first questioner, we're still doing this personalization and even the data related to all of this still in the 20th century. We have all had in our states longitudinal data systems created through stimulus money, and most of those are buried. The evidence, the data are not made available to students. They're not made available to high school counselors. They're not made available to college academic advisors. And so we have taxpayer-supported institutions issuing degrees to nowhere. Even those who do complete, they celebrate their commencement and then realize that because they got a degree in areas that they didn't know wouldn't yield them a job, they are now working at Kmart or Walmart. It's a crisis. And we have the data. The people who don't know what they don't know are the students, and we're keeping it from them. Where is the app, the system that will tell them what it is they're going to do, what are their chances of earning a living if they do take that soft degree? And so wanting to party instead of doing the hard STEM stuff, they think, well, all degrees are created equal, and we're supporting them in that notion. I mean, when are we going to wake up?
Thank you, Senator. I'm not sure there was a question, but I think the marketability quotient is one that's quite cogent. The notion that you have a skill that's marketable in the workplace, that has some value in the workplace, is about what all of our investments in higher education are in terms of the of credential, BA, whatever. But I think it's a valid question, and I'd love to the panel to take 30 seconds and talk about that sort of notion and how they might be tackling it.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic comment and a very passionate delivery of that comment, and I would agree with you. That's why we are certainly looking at, we have a tool right now called collegefortn.org, which does that. A student can go in, they can see what jobs are available in the state, in their region, they can see pathways to get there, but we realize that we still don't have enough college students, school counselors, high school students, school counselors or teachers actually accessing it and using it. So we're trying to get into the 21st century and create this app that makes that more usable, makes it more in a gaming environment to help students see what these opportunities are for them and to connect those dots. And certainly all of the programs that we're incentivizing through any kind of state grant or regional grant are all pointed toward what jobs actually exist, and let's move students to those. And I couldn't agree more with ACS is focusing on early foundations, early learning. By the way, the data points to that we need to be getting students exposed, work in, doing problem solving in the STEM fields, healthcare fields, all those related fields as early as 1st and 2nd grade. And we're missing the boat if we just think this is all starting for kids in 9th and 10th grade. It's a mistake that we need to realize all this has to start much earlier in a student's experience.
I think that's a very key point. Any comments from?
10-second comment. Representative Chad Magendas from our state is proposing that exact database and is working with Employment Security and is also working with the Educational Research Data Center. We have a lot of data sharing agreements in our state, and Representative Magendas is doing exactly that in our state.
Perfect.
I would just say that not anti-state or federal policy, but I think I've become much more locally oriented. And in the town where my corporate headquarters exists, called Albany, New York, we actually have a community-based organization of all of us, all the usual suspects, at one table looking at the data. The reason the data I never know whether it's singular or plural, don't get used is we don't use them in our day-to-day practice about what works to get this Albany high school kid to Hudson Valley Community College and the University of Albany. But when we look at the data together, we quit admiring the problem and we start using the data to change practice. And it's hard at the state level and the federal level to get your hands on the kind of data the senator is calling for in the day-to-day use of that data in our own local communities.
Yeah, but I think that's exactly right. And it's it's the connections too. We haven't spoken too much in this panel between the actual workforce and the work needs in our economy, as well as and stay tuned for other sessions at the conference as well, early learning and preparedness from that standpoint. I'd love to thank the panel members for participating in this engaging conversation. Thank you.
Thanks, Nancy.
We're gonna exit with a little teaser. The last video that we're gonna tee up is one that's called "If I Knew Then." It's just 17 seconds, but hopefully you'll enjoy it. And looking forward to greater conversations as we go throughout the next 3 days. Thank you for coming.
What I realize is that every year that goes by, let's say this year, right? I see how easy it was, or how easy it could have been if I would have done something differently the previous year.
Nancy, thank you.